Good afternoon. So happy to be back with you, Fatima. I know we took a short break. Thank you for your patience as I'm in the process of finishing my PhD, but I'm glad we could find some time to talk about some very important topics. I have the privilege of being in your class once a week, and I always appreciate the fact that you have a really unique way of blending your expertise in multiple areas. So, in physics and engineering, from a STEM and applied practical background, you also are a therapist, so you bring into the psychological aspects and, of course, a spiritual religious aspect from your expertise in the Quran. And so I'm going to hand it over to you because I know we have some exciting things to talk about, but I think it's best if it comes from you.
Thank you, Ivy. And I'm also so excited to get back to have those videos to help if we can help. So I am called Fatima El-Hindi, and I was born to teach end of suffering through the universal light of consciousness. This is how I see myself. I always felt that I was really born to teach. As when I was growing, I thought I was born to teach math and physics. But as I teach the math in college classes or when I help people, privately, I always felt like I take them back to their higher self, to the consciousness. And then with time, I realized, like, maybe, I am here to teach the universal light of consciousness. So through my experience, whether in academia or in my own personal life or as a community leader for the past, 30 years, I learned something that I really want to share. They call it the laws of end suffering. So humans are really social being by design, and everybody can see that. You don't need a degree to understand that without a relationship, there is no existence. Really, to be is to be related, whether be related to a parent, to be related to a friend or whatever. We are all connected and related with each other. So that's like a fact. Relationships are our existence. So anyway, but what I always felt is we tend to look at the world and complain about how the world is messed up. Everybody is complaining. Everywhere you turn, people are complaining. And if we don't complain about people, we complain about the weather. There is always a way to complain. Anyway, what I really wanted to share today with you, Ivy, is there is a profound verse in the teachings of the Quran. And that verse says, indeed, it's verse, it's in chapter 13, named Agha, chapter 13, verse 11. It says, indeed, Allah does not change what is with a folk until they change what is within themselves. So we must first investigate and improve ourselves and the relationship we are in, starting with the closest, most intimate ones, such as with our spouse and our children. So to me, is improving our relationships from a place of, you can call it genuine curiosity and understanding, create space for love.
Could you do me a favor real quick before we dive in and just repeat that verse one more time? Because I think it's a really great one, and I just want to make sure everyone heard it clearly.
Yeah. So it is a verse in chapter 13, verse number 11. It says, indeed. So let me translate it again because I have it in my mind in the Arabic. But it goes like, indeed, Allah does not change what is with a folk, the Arabic word of folk is biqawm, what is with a folk until, and it emphasized until they change what is within themselves.
Beautiful, beautiful. And then also, for those who haven't watched our videos or are unclear, could you just do a quick clarification when we say the word Allah, like what we actually mean by it? Because it may not be what most people would assume.
Yeah, Allah in the Quranic teaching refers to source energy, or I would say the universal laws of source energy. Sometimes I hear the sound law in Allah. So it's the universal laws of source energy.
Wonderful. Perfect. All right, let's dive in.
Yeah. So to me, as people are living and thinking they love each other, but I will call that the ego love or the separation love. I love you so much, but if there is a problem, you realize, hey, where is that love? So true love comes from true understanding. So this is very critical. So if there is a problem in a relationship, it's because we lack love and mercy within. And lots of people, they think like, oh, she doesn't love me, or he doesn't love me. You even hear, if it's not in a partnership relationship, like a husband and wife, or, you know, partners before marriage or whatever, they usually complain, oh, he doesn't love me. But in reality, you don't love yourself. Once you love yourself, you change your attitude because you are what? It is just a projection of the inner child. And usually, projection goes hand in hand with expectations of changing, for example, the partner. They need to change their behavior, while in reality, we need to heal ourselves from, our own generational trauma. And that's even children with their siblings or with their friends in school. So the source of love is within ourselves, and it is unlimited, pure, and sacred. And I feel like that's what we need to bring to people's awareness. Okay. And I can speak forever with my experience as a therapist with my clients, and they come wounded. And then, as you know, when I do the QHHT sessions, we help the clients to go into trance to connect with their higher self. So many people are not good meditators. They don't meditate. They don't know how to connect with their higher self. So they may need some help. But once they get there, they can see that their problem is really from their own wounds. Does that make sense,
Absolutely.
Ivy?
Absolutely.
Yeah. The first law that, as I gathered my own notes from my own experience, I call it the law of forgiveness. And this law is also a huge chapter in the Quran. And when I went to study that chapter deeply, I was like, oh my gosh. And that's really what helped me here. Because as you know, and I don't know if I shared it with you before or not, as you know, I was separated from my own two children when they were young. I left them back home in Algeria for like almost 4 years, and I didn't do it purposefully. There was so many problems with my ex-husband, with immigration issues. I was not able to see my two children for almost 4 years. And that really was very tough as a mother to not be able to see your kids for that long. No matter what ways and means I tried to see them, I couldn't. It was above me. So now that challenge, okay, I call it was the biggest lesson that helped me understand the law of forgiveness, because I could not go above the suffering in a way until I understood that law. So the past will continue to live with us no matter what we try to rid ourselves of it. So the old suffering continue to echo with us and produces distress. So only forgiveness, and I call it the true forgiveness. The forgiveness comes from within your heart, from you, and it helps you to cleanse our cellular memory from the anger and the resentment that came from a situation or a challenge or whatever we experience. And everyone's experience is different because everyone's journey is different. But my point is that I want to stress is the energy field emitted by our cells generates our what we call emotional body. So if we don't heal from our heart, for our emotional body, we will keep co-creating the same distressing situations. And that's why I learned, like, of course, by experience, by the teachings of the high Sufi scholars like Rumi and Ibn Arabi and all these, and really understanding the chapter of the law of forgiveness, I learned like we cannot have an unconditional love, without having unconditional forgiveness. I don't know if that resonates with you, Ivy, or what would you say about that? Or
It,
do you have a question?
I think it absolutely resonates. And I think one thing I would be curious about is how we can differentiate between self-forgiveness and the forgiveness of others. And so I know, and I'm sure you probably felt it when you shared that story of perhaps the self-guilt of being unable to see your children for 4 years. And I know that a lot of people also have issues forgiving people who they feel that they have wrongs them. And so are those skill sets for self-forgiveness and the forgiveness of other the same or different? And what are some tools that we can use for either scenario? Because as you know, things are easier said than done.
Yeah, that's true. What I learned from that experience myself of the separation from my own children is ego loves attachment. That's one thing. And ego loves attachment, achievements, so many things. So I needed to see like the root problem first. I remember at first what I did, I tried to occupy myself with schooling, and that's what led me to get so many master's degree because I wanted just like going from one academic degree to another. But meanwhile, I kept being thinking and meditating and praying, what is all this suffering for? It's a human thing. Like we all start to think like, why I am suffering from such situation? Is it because I'm not accepting? Is it something I can fix? I went through all of this doubt, the guilt. Maybe I should have stayed back home. What am I doing here? I should not have came here. I'm gonna just go, name it. Anything will come to mind. But then, with time, with meditation, you start to focus and you start to learn like, oh, all these challenges related to this issue is just to help you to observe your actions and your reactions and what you learn from it. And then you start to bring to surface, maybe it was something designed before I even came. Maybe I wanted to evolve faster. Maybe there are things I cannot control here, but I need to just learn how to react to the situation. So if I didn't do that, I'll tell you, Ivy, for sure, I would not have gone out of it. Now, what are all the tools? This is what I really call the laws of end suffering. I cannot go over all of them today, but one thing I will just emphasize on is where attention goes, energy flows. So, and this principle determines the degree of challenge we face in life. So instead of focusing on why me, why is this happening, I started to focus my attention on, is this happening to teach me a lesson? Is this for my growth? And that's when I started to spend more time diving deep in understanding the self and the teaching of the self. And that's how I went also to learn about the all other cultures. What do they say besides just the teaching of the Quran? And I was kind of focusing on the positive outcome from the challenges than just like what was happening. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I would say that the same probably applies if you are trying to seek forgiveness with someone else. as well, focusing not so much in that instance of what the other person did, but
Yeah.
instead viewing it as a learning experience, accepting what happened, and then then shift your focus on the actionable items that you can take in response to what had happened to you.
And that's what I meant by where attention goes, energy flows. At first, I have to be honest, at first my attention was into to blame the person that caused this.
Mhm.
Because like I kept saying, well, it's an easy piece of paper to sign and I will be back with my children. But then later on in life, because I spent time trying to work on myself and trying to understand and to accept. That's why I say acceptance, it's a key. So I put my attention on what is there for me to learn from this experience. And once my attention went into there must be growth from this experience. There must be to learn not to be attached, just, live day by day and see what happens. One thing that helped me tremendously is also prayer and meditation. And as you know, I always say prayer is communicating, talking to God. Meditation is listening and receiving. So I learned from that experience the power of what we call in our prayers every day. We always start by bringing the presence of the compassionate, creative energy, the merciful. That's the first verse in first chapter of the Quran, and then it's every chapter in the Quran starts with that verse, except one chapter, and we know why. But anyway, that presence, by presence, so I was always in the presence of my higher self. In that presence, you will be in contentment. It just like this is how it is. And with time, people will start to feel the presence that helped me to go through it. And before you know it, the years went by. I was back with my children. They all came and we reunited and we have a happy time together. So I learned a lot from my own experience and I learned a lot from raising 6 children. So, these are 6 kids, and each one has a different consciousness, and each one has his own, luggage. Sometimes the luggage is not from the childhood. Sometimes they come up with things from their own past life experiences. All that added to what I call myself now. I am a teacher to help people and suffering by understanding whom they are at the core and activate the light of consciousness that's within.
I guess my final question is for those who have watched the video, what are some actionable steps, if we can summarize, for being able to get this forgiveness that is a key step for the end of suffering? Because what I've heard from you, if I could perhaps try to summarize it myself, and then you can add whatever you feel might be missing or might not be spot on, is the first, I think, really is this acceptance and this trust that even though it may seem negative at a time, that really everything in the universe is working for you. And so, what might be a negative, as you said, really could be a learning experience to grow. And I believe from this conversation we've had is the best way to grow is to shift the focus not on what has externally happened to you, but instead to reclaim that agency and then put attention on what can I do in response to this? Because when things go bad, what is the first thing we do is we react. And instead taking that moment to say, accept this is what's happened. It might not be inherently negative. So shift the focus to a positive energy and then see what you can do in the interim to fix whatever might be in front of you. And then to then have patience to see it through. And I think part of that comes with giving either yourself grace if it's something that you're working on forgiving yourself,
Mhm.
or, and I know easier said than done, extending that grace or at least trying to another person or institution situation that you feel is also partially responsible for your situation. But I think really the key is giving that agency back to yourself. Because if we focus on what's happened to us, we're really just recycling negative energy with nothing positive that can come out of that.
Exactly. You made a great summary. I love it. All I can add to it is this is something I was like downloading in my meditation many, many years ago. I say, like, maybe when I was going through that period, and I call it the triple A of life. Just like, it's in my website, it's in my book. Like, just like you call AAA to save you in a highway, the
Right.
triple A of life, I start with saying it's accountability,
Mhm.
acceptance, and appreciation. Accountability is basically responsibility. What's responsibility is how you respond to a situation. So basically is how you react. So if I reacted spending the whole period of time just focusing, I'm not able to see my children, and I'm sitting depressed, crying, I would not have achieved or done anything. And that's why I keep saying and I keep teaching. First thing is accountability. You just say, okay, I'm going to be responsible for what I can do. But if it's out of my control, there is nothing I can change. It's out of my control. Then what do? I just accept it. And then once you accept what is out of your control and you cannot change, the next step is appreciate the moment, appreciate the present moment that you have with whatever you can do and you can be. And then, you find yourself creating a momentum of change.
Absolutely. And I think, and I know again, easier said than done, but a part of that appreciation or that gratitude is shifting focus on what is actually working in your favor. Things could be worse.
Yeah.
And to at least shift your attention on, okay, this is the situation now. It's not the situation forever. And there is a clear way out. It may not be what I would have preferred, but I think it's always key, although very difficult, to try to shift our attention or our energy to a state of gratitude, even when
Yeah.
times are difficult.
Yeah, I will give tools next time. We will be able to explain all those laws. But one thing that I can end with it is just start from today to understand that forgiveness is really a law, and you need to understand how to apply this law. And to apply it, people need to understand what's coming from fear and what's coming from love, from their higher self. And these are topics that we will work on next time.
Oh, great. Well,
Okay.
this has been really informative as usual. Thank you so much for starting us off. And I think that that's a great place to end and a great segue to our next discussion.
And thank you for having me.
Always.
Thanks. Bye.